Hello, lovely listeners. I'm Julia, who will help you relax and fall asleep tonight. What time is it for you right now? And do you have a cozy drink or snack that helps you relax before bed? Let me know in the comments. In a small, forgotten village on the edge of a vast, enchanted forest, there lived a humble woodcutter and his two children. The children, a brother and a sister named Hansel and Gretel, had grown up listening to the whisper of ancient trees, the rustle of leaves in a soft wind, and the murmurs of unseen creatures that lived among the gnarled trunks. Their home, a modest cabin stretched amidst towering pines and moss-covered stones, was filled with love despite the hardships that weighed upon the family. The seasons passed slowly, marked by an unyielding hunger and bitter winds that cut through the thin walls of their dwelling. But it was hope that kept the family together. The woodcutter, weary from years of labor and loss, did his best to care for his children. Yet as time wore on, the hardships magnified. The abundance of the forest that had once sustained many turned barren, and the once generous streams now barely whispered of life. The siblings, with their gentle smiles and innocent curiosity, filled the long starless nights with hushed lullabies, while their father labored through the cold mornings with nothing but the fragile flame of hope. It was during one particularly harsh winter that a new figure came into their lives, a woman who claimed to have come to care for them, with eyes as cold as the winter frost and a voice that carried the promise of a better tomorrow. She soon became the stepmother. At first, her presence seemed to bring relief, for she cooked hearty meals and tidied the meager home with efficient swiftness. But as the days lengthened and the bitter cold sank deep into the bones of every family member, it became clear that the stepmother harbored secrets of her own. Her smile, brittle and quick to vanish, hinted at a deeper, darker resolve. Late at night, while the wind howled through the cracks of the cottage, she whispered to the woodcutter in tones almost inaudible, discussing matters that chilled the heart. Gradually, an unspoken dread began to take root in Hansel and Gretel's hearts. One evening, as twilight melted into darkness and the wind became a mournful cry outside their thin walls, Hansel lay awake, listening to hushed accusations and fearful questioning. Hidden by shadows in the narrow corridor, he overheard his stepmother speak to his father in tremulous voices. "There is not enough to feed all of us, and the children, though so full of life, only bring sorrow in these hard times. They will only remind you of what has been lost," she whispered, her voice as smooth as poison. The woodcutter's reply was soft, almost defeated. "I know, but what choice do we have? They must not suffer if there is a chance to save what little remains of our future." Hansel's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and determination as he listened. Every word cut through him like a sharpened shard of ice, and in that moment, he understood that the world was about to change in ways no child should ever have to endure. He hastily filled his pockets with the smooth white stones he found scattered near the door, a comfort and a beacon of hope for the dark road ahead. As sleep finally claimed him, the tiny pebbles weighing in his hand whispered promises of light in the darkness. When dawn broke the following day, the first pale rays of light revealed a heavy silence within the cottage. The air was filled with a sense of foreboding that hinted at the unnatural decisions made the night before. The woodcutter, with drooping eyes burdened by sorrow, gathered a few belongings and announced that they would make their way deep into the forest. The children sensed immediately that this was not the routine journey to find firewood or fetch water from the brook. Instead, the path would lead them to an unknown fate, an unknown destiny for which even the ancient trees might shudder in silent warning. Hand in hand, Hansel and Gretel followed their father along a narrow trail that wound between towering oaks and tangled thickets. The forest was dense and mysterious, bathed in a murky light as the sun seemingly hesitated to peek through the canopy. Gusts of wind whispered secrets, as if the trees themselves were mourning what was to come. Every rustle in the underbrush and every creak of an old branch pressed upon the children's hearts, urging them to listen carefully to the sound of their own beating hearts. As they ventured further, the children began to notice details that they had never paid heed to before: the delicate glimmer of dew on spider webs, the intricate patterns formed by fallen leaves, and the way the forest floor cushioned their tentative footsteps. Hansel's resolve grew even stronger as he discreetly dropped the smooth white stones along the path they trod. Each stone was a testament to his secret determination, that they were to find their way back home if fortune allowed it. Gretel, though young, sensed the growing danger and clutched her brother's hand tightly, whispering, "We must be brave, Hansel. One day we will leave this dark place behind." In the soft, trembling voice of a child, hope mingled with fear. After a time that felt both eternal and fleeting, the trio reached a clearing bathed in an ethereal glow. Luminous beams of sunlight filtered through the canopy, illuminating a curious structure at the center of the glen. It was a house unlike any they had ever seen, a confection of gingerbread and candy, its walls adorned with shimmering sugar, and windows made of delicate translucent crystal. The air around it was redolent with scents of sweet spice, and it seemed to beckon the weary travelers with promises of comfort and warmth. Hansel and Gretel's eyes widened in awe as they beheld the marvel before them, momentarily forgetting the creeping dread that had shrouded their journey. "Look, Hansel, a house made of candy and cake," Gretel exclaimed, her voice trembling with a mixture of wonder and excitement. Their father, however, wore an expression of deep concern. "Do not be fooled by the sweetness," he cautioned. "There are things in this forest that glisten with deception. Stay close and be aware." Yet the allure of the gently crumbling gingerbread walls and the sparkling sugar that seemed to glisten like tiny stars was nearly irresistible. In quiet unison, the children moved toward the enchanted structure, their eyes sparkling with innocent delight. It was as if all the hardships they had endured melted away before the sugary enchantment of the confectionery cottage. They approached slowly, every step seeming to echo with the promise of dreams fulfilled and a life unburdened by harsh reality. No sooner had they drawn near than the door creaked open with a groan that resonated deep within the forest's ancient heart. Standing in the doorway was a hunched woman draped in a patchwork cloak that seemed to shift with every subtle movement of the light, from dark, foreboding hues to splashes of vibrant, unsettling colors. Her eyes, glinting like shards of obsidian, locked onto the children with a gaze that was both curious and calculating. "Welcome, dear children," she crooned in a voice that was simultaneously gentle and disconcerting. "Come inside. The cold of the forest will chill your bones more than any neglect." Hansel felt something stir within him, a warning, a whisper from the stones he had left behind, and yet his hunger and longing for hope silenced his better judgment. Gretel, too, was caught in the strange charm of the moment. "We're so hungry," she murmured softly, stepping forward. "Could it be that we might find warmth and food in here?" The old woman's smile widened unnaturally. She nodded slowly. Yes, yes indeed. Come, sit and be comforted. But as the children stepped inside, the cozy warmth of the interior belied the dark intentions that lurked within the heart of the cottage. Unbeknownst to them, every sweet morsel, every inch of sugary decoration was laced with enchantments and curses meant to trap souls rather than nourish bodies. The woman led them to a small wooden table, laden with plates brimming with colorful confections. "Eat, my dears," she urged softly. "Let the sweetness fill you, for the bitter days behind you need not follow you here." Gretel reached out, slowly taking a piece of candied fruit as Hansel hesitated, his instincts warning him of unseen dangers. The moment the candy touched his tongue, however, he was overcome by a sudden dizziness, as if the taste had unlocked hidden, sliding passages of his mind. "It tastes of both joy and sorrow, doesn't it?" he whispered to Gretel, whose bright eyes had now clouded with worry. The old woman's laughter echoed softly in the background, almost tender, almost cruel in its cadence. In the days that followed, Hansel was confined to a small, narrow space behind the gingerbread walls, locked away while the witch, as the old woman was now known, plotted her gruesome plans. Each day, she would fatten him slowly, our steps measured like a dark dance with fate. "You must become plump and tender, for only then will you be a feast to remember," she would murmur while preparing elaborate potions and forbidden recipes. Meanwhile, Gretel was forced into labor, cleaning and preparing the sweets, her hands calloused by the hard work, and her eyes forever searching for a way to break free of the ghastly captivity. Night after night, in the dim light of a guttering candle, Hansel and Gretel exchanged whispered words of hope and secret plans of escape. "I will not let them take away our future," Hansel insisted softly, his eyes shining with both fear and steely determination. "One day we will find a way out, and together we will return to the world we knew, a world of open fields, of warmth and of love." Gretel, with quiet resolve and the wisdom of one who has suffered much, responded, "We must be patient and cunning, dear brother, for even in the midst of darkness the smallest spark can kindle a flame that no evil can extinguish." Their days in the witch's candy-coated prison were filled with sorrow and small rebellions. Hansel's spirit was bolstered by the hidden stones he had left behind at an earlier point in their journey, before the witch's clutches had ensnared them fully. Every time he felt hope flickering inside him, he would imagine those smooth, pale stones shining in the moonlight, guiding him with silent determination. Gretel, too, clung to memories of carefree days in the forest, when the world was painted in the gentle hues of dawn and the laughter of birds filled the air. In their secret whispers, they promised each other that one day they would walk free among the trees, free to feel the earth under their bare feet and to hear the symphonies of nature without the threat of hunger or cruel enchantments. The witch's plan, however, was not meant to yield easily. She was a creature of ancient magic, one born of the darkest corners of the forest, and she had long searched for souls as delicate and pure as those of Hansel and Gretel. She reveled in the twisted irony of using the very sweetness meant to lure the innocent to doom. Every night, as the witch cackled softly to herself, she would gaze upon Hansel's frail form and mutter, "Soon you will be as soft as the dreams you once carried, and your sister will dance with the shadows of my making." Her words, meant to torment and manipulate, only served to strengthen the siblings' resolve to defy her. One fateful evening, as the sky turned a muted shade of lavender and the campfire of the moon cast silvery light across the kitchen floor, Gretel observed the witch preparing a large ancient oven, its stone interior glowing with an unearthly fire. Realization dawned upon the brave girl that the witch's plan was not only to fatten Hansel, but ultimately to consume him, and perhaps even to sacrifice her own life in the process should she interfere. Determined to protect her brother, Gretel resolved in that heart-stopping moment that she would no longer be a bystander to fate's cruel game. "Hansel, listen closely," Gretel whispered one night as she secretly crept to his side. "There is a way to foil her schemes. I have noticed that every time she speaks of you, her voice fills with a sort of arrogance, as if she believes us too feeble to even fathom outsmarting her. But I believe that if we work together, we can turn her own cunning against her." Hansel, his voice frail yet burning with newfound determination, replied, "I trust you, Gretel. Tell me, what must I do?" With his hand trembling but heart steadfast, she continued, "When she calls you to come near the oven, act as though you are too weak to resist and trick her into positioning the contraption. Then, when the moment is ripe, I will lure her close enough so that the flames consume her wickedness." In the following days, Gretel carefully observed the witch's rituals and learned the intimate workings of her enchanted domain. She noted the precise moments when the witch's defenses would slacken, the quiet intervals when the old woman allowed the lull of routine to dull her vigilance. Her plan became a series of small, deliberate acts of rebellion, misplacing the keys to Hansel's confinement ever so subtly, stirring conversations with cautious inquiries about the workings of the oven when the witch's back was turned, and preparing a seemingly innocent distraction that would provide her the precious minutes needed to act. Then came the day that would define their destiny. The witch, now growing impatient with the slow progress of her devious plan, summoned Hansel and Gretel early in the morning. "Today, my dear children," she declared with a voice that was both silky and menacing, "you shall prepare a great feast. Hansel, I must see that you are growing plump and succulent. And Gretel, you shall ready the oven to ensure that all is perfectly in order." As the witch spoke these words with a chilling certainty, Hansel and Gretel exchanged an unspoken look, a vow sealed in silent defiance and unwavering love. That day, as the air outside turned crisp and the forest murmured secrets to each other, Gretel put her plan into action. With the quiet precision of a seasoned conspirator, she rose early while the witch was preoccupied with other tasks. Cautiously, she crept toward the dreaded oven. Her heart pounded fiercely in her ears, and her breath caught as she imagined the life and freedom waiting just beyond the confines of the witch's twisted castle. She waited for the precise moment the witch would return, a moment when the old crone's back was turned and her eyes alight with the satisfaction of her perceived victory over the children. When the witch at last strode back into the room with a self-satisfied smile, Gretel sprang into action. "Ah, my dear, the preparations are nearly complete," the witch intoned as she glanced at Hansel, who was meekly feigning weakness in his cage. "Now fetch me some water to stoke the flames and ensure that my oven is properly kindled." With a forced groveling of false concern, Gretel nodded and offered, "Of course, I will see to it immediately." The witch's eyes gleamed as she leaned in closer, murmuring, "Do not dawdle now, for time is as fleeting as the fairness of your hopes." With every ounce of courage, Gretel retreated into the shadowy recesses of the cottage. Clutching a sturdy branch found on the floor, a remnant of a prior meal of scattered treats, She positioned herself near the oven. Her mind raced with memories of moments shared with Hansel in the golden light of kinder days, and the determination in her heart grew with each remembered smile. When the witch reappeared, apparently to check on the girl's progress, Gretel saw her opportunity. "Step aside slightly," she said with an unexpected firmness that surprised even herself. The witch's face wavered between confusion and anger, and in that flickering moment, Gretel lunged forward, the branch clattering against the old woman's wrist as she attempted to push her closer to the roaring heat of the ancient oven. A scream, both piercing and unearthly, tore through the silence. The witch's eyes widened with rage and shock as she was thrown off balance, her legs tangled in the frayed rug near the doorway. "You insolent child!" she shrieked, her voice echoing against the candy-cast walls. But Gretel's resolve did not falter. In one fluid motion, she seized the moment, tipping the heavy lid of the oven open with both hands and shoving the hapless witch into its blazing interior with a cry of defiance. The flames surged forth like living tongues, engulfing the witch in a searing blaze that seemed to wash away the cruelty and malevolence that had once filled the cottage. Hansel, hearing the commotion, felt a swell of relief and trepidation, even as he saw the inferno devour the creature who had tormented them for so long. He could not shake the raw primal fear that the witch's dark magic might still have a lingering hold on their fate. But then, Gretel's tearful smile reached him across the murky twilight of his fettered prison, and hope rekindled within him. "Your nightmare is over, dear brother," she whispered urgently. "Now is the time for us to be free." With the witch's demise came a sudden shift in the very air of the crooked cottage. The oppressive magic that had held them prisoner seemed to dissolve like morning mist under the gentle caress of the sun. Hansel, still weak from days of confinement, was freed from his bonds by Gretel's careful, surreptitious act. Together, the two children hastily gathered any remnants of sweetness they might use, candied gems and exotic spices that glowed softly amid the ashes and crumble of their former prison, to help light their path out into the uncertain forest beyond. Stepping away from the now smoldering confectionery structure, Hansel's small hand found Gretel's, and together they embarked on their escape. The forest greeted them, its ancient branches creaking softly as if in farewell to the dark chapter that had just ended. Every step was a small act of defiance against the cruelty of fate. Every rustling leaf and nip of cold wind a reminder of the fragile beauty of the world that still lay ahead. "We must follow the stones I left behind," Hansel murmured softly, and though the puppies of memory flickered and faltered in his mind, he recalled the smooth white shapes he had scattered along their path long ago. Yet the journey home was no simple walk. The forest, as if aware of their plight, seemed determined to test them at every turn. Shadows danced between the ancient trunks, their movements almost sentient. Twisting vines and brambles reached out like ghostly hands, and mysterious sounds followed them in a seemingly endless echo. At one point, as dusk began to fall in liquid waves over the forest floor, the siblings encountered a weeping willow that whispered secrets of the past in a language older than time. Hansel touched the rough, cold bark and softly said, "Even in this living labyrinth, nature remembers us." Gretel nodded, replies mingled with tears and hope. "Yes, and nature shall guide us home, for even the darkest paths are lit by the light of love." For hours they walked, guided by the familiar glimmer of the small stones Hansel had laid out. Slowly, the oppressive gloom lifted, replaced by the delicate radiance of a starlit sky. The whisper of the wind grew gentler, and in that quiet reprieve, they began to hear a distant, comforting sound. The gentle murmur of a flowing stream, the laughter of woodland creatures in the night. Their hearts, which had known only despair and dread, began to swell with the sweetness of hope. "We are near," Gretel whispered with trembling joy. "I feel it in every beat of my heart." Hansel could only smile weakly, leaning on his sister's steady presence as they followed the silver trail of moonlight weaving through the forest. After what felt like an eternity of careful steps and quiet determination, the forest began to give way to the sights and sounds of the familiar village. In the distance, the gentle glow of candlelight shone through the windows of small cottages, and the comforting murmur of village life reached their ears. With each step, memories of happier times, of laughter in sunlit meadows and warm embraces, filled their minds. Their father, burdened with guilt and longing since the cruel decision that had torn their family apart, had never ceased searching for them. And though days of cold despair had darkened his eyes, the moment he saw his children emerging timidly from the fringes of the forest, his heart burst forth with unbounded relief and joy. The reunion was as bittersweet as it was tender. The father fell to his knees, his voice choked with sorrow and remorse as he embraced each child in turn. "My dear Hansel, my sweet Gretel," he cried, stroking their damp hair as though to erase the cruelty of the past. "Forgive me for the choices that have haunted our lives, and know that I have missed you every moment since fate tore us apart." Gretel, her eyes still shining with tears of both sorrow and relief, quietly murmured, "Father, we have come back, and together we can mend the broken threads of our family." And in that moment, even the bitter wind outside seemed to soften, as if nature itself recognized the healing power of reunited hearts. Back in the village, the tale of the lost children and the terrible witch spread like wildfire, whispered in awe, in sorrow, and in pride of the bravery that had outlasted the darkest moments of their lives. The father, transformed by the ordeal, dedicated himself to rebuilding not just a home of wood and stone, but a home of love that would keep the shadows at bay. Hansel and Gretel, now wise beyond their tender years, learned the lessons of sacrifice, ingenuity, and the perseverance of love, even in the face of overwhelming despair. Their tale, passed down through generations by gentle voices in low-lit rooms, reminded all who listened that the sweetness of life could flourish even after the bitterest trials. In the quiet twilight of many evenings that followed, as the family gathered by a small hearth and the stars danced above in endless constellations, Hansel would sometimes hold Gretel's hand and recount the details of their secret escape, the stones that guided them, the whispered conspiracies shared in the dark, and the brave, decisive moment when their world changed. "I still remember the sound of your heartbeat, the song of the forest telling us to be brave," he would say to her softly. And in those moments of recollection, their hearts held together the promise of a new beginning, a future free of the cruel enchantments and sorrows of the past. Time passed like the gentle flow of a winding stream, carrying away the last remnants of despair with it. The forest, once a place of dread and dark magic, slowly became a cherished ally, a silent witness to the miracles that courage and love could achieve. The siblings found solace in the rustling leaves, the singing winds, and the tender gaze of the moon that watched over them every night. the scars of their memories, though still whispered in the quiet moments before sleep, were softened by the healing balm of nature's gentle grace. Over time, their home blossomed with the warmth of community and the shared resilience of souls who had faced darkness and found light. The father often would sit by the door in the evenings watching as Hansel and Gretel skipped along the village pathways, their laughter echoing a promise that the future was boundless and bright. Neighbors, who had once looked on with pity, now marveled at the strength of the siblings, and their tale inspired songs of hope that mingled with the fragrant scent of blooming lilacs. They have turned despair into triumph, an elder would often say in hushed reverence. Their gentle hearts have shown us that even in the deepest shadow, the light of love can bring the dawn. On one particularly clear night, as the first whispers of spring caressed the earth, and the slumbering villagers dreamed of brighter days, Hansel and Gretel found themselves alone beneath a canopy of twinkling stars. Sitting on a soft bed of moss near a trickling brook, the siblings reflected on their journey. Hansel broke the silence softly. "Remember, Gretel, when we first lost our way in that dark forest? I used those stones to chart our return, and they became not just markers of our steps, but reminders that no matter how far we wander, there is always a path back home." Gretel, with a gentle smile and eyes full of tender remembrance, replied, "And it is our love that is the true beacon, that even in fear and loneliness, we found the strength to rise again." Their soft voices, mingling with the melody of the night, carried the promise of new beginnings, a declaration that the trials of yesteryear had forged an unbreakable bond brimming with hope. In the days that followed, life gradually resumed a semblance of normalcy in the village. The bitter cold gave way to the warm embrace of spring, and the memory of hardship was slowly transformed into a legacy of courage and renewal. Hansel and Gretel, though forever marked by the trials they had overcome, grew to fill the village with the light of their gentle spirits, inspiring those around them with the belief that even against the darkest of odds, goodness could prevail. Their father's eyes, once haunted with remorse, now shone with the hope of redemption, and the community learned that sometimes the greatest gifts are born from the fiercest storms. Even as the children blossomed into adulthood, the whisper of the enchanted forest and that dark, twisted cottage of confectionery fables lingered in the corners of their memories, a cautionary tale of deceit, cruelty, and the resilience of the human spirit. They would sometimes, on long, introspective walks by the edge of the woodland, recall the timbre of the witch's chilling laughter and the crackle of the fire as it consumed her wickedness. Yet rather than being filled with bitterness, they found solace in having outwitted a fate that had once sought to break them. In the quiet hours before dawn, when the first soft light kissed the village rooftops, the siblings often sat together by the quiet brook. Hansel, with a faraway look in his eyes, would murmur, "You know, Gretel, it is as if the forest itself was enchanted, not merely by the witch's spells, but by a deeper magic, a magic that teaches us to find beauty in adversity." Gretel would nod knowingly, her voice tender and full of wonder. "Yes, and every whisper of the wind, every rustle of the leaves reminds me that hope is eternal." Their quiet exchanges were a testament to the journey they had taken, a journey marked by heartbreak and triumph, despair and an ever-bright promise of renewal. In time, the once dark memory of that terrible winter would fade into legend, a story recited softly by candlelight on wintry evenings, a reminder that even in the fiercest storms, one can find a way to rise again. And so, as the family gathered beneath the gentle glow of a starry sky, the legacy of Hansel and Gretel lived on in every whispered hope, in every quiet act of courage, and in the laughter of children who believed that love indeed conquers all. Now, as you lay your head to rest and the ancient whispers of the wind sing lullabies of forgotten wonder, let your heart remember that courage blooms in the face of darkness, and that every gentle star above is a reminder of the light that always follows night. Let the story of Hansel and Gretel, with all its trials and tender triumphs, be a beacon of hope, a promise that even when the path seems lost in shadow, love and determination will lead you back home, where warmth, forgiveness, and the quiet magic of a new dawn await. Sweet dreams, good night.